Welcome back to another episode of Four Insight. I'm your host, Mike Obi. Special trade deadline episode. The NBA trade deadline is come and gone. We'll be dissecting the moves that were made over the past week. And as the NBA season begins to wind down, we'll be able to look at the picture going forward as the playoffs come near, and we'll be able to see kind of the landscape of the league and who I believe, will be the NBA champion eventually. But just looking at some of the moves last week, we'll start off with the moves that kind of caused the most uproar, which was, LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin being bought out from their respective teams and joining the Brooklyn Nets. A lot of people have felt, well, these are two former All-Stars, and now, they're building this kind of juggernaut out there in Brooklyn. I mean, it started off with just Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and then they were able to trade for James Harden. Now they're able to add people like LaMarcus Aldridge and, Blake Griffin onto the team and onto that culture. And, for those who are upset about it, I mean, I get it because it seems unfair, but at the same time, I'm a big proponent and, these teams don't have to trade, like the Rockets didn't have to trade James Harden to the Nets. They could have traded him anywhere else, but they chose that deal. Right. And then that just becomes the superstar effect where, stars want to play with stars. They want to play in a situation in an environment where they feel like they can win. Part of the reason it didn't work out for people like Blake Griffin and LaMarcus were because they were in losing cultures, boring cultures. They weren't really being stimulated. There was no motivation. So naturally, they want to go somewhere where they feel like they can win and where they can, let their game sort of be unlocked. And I think that's just what you saw with the Brooklyn Nets. I don't, personally have an issue with guys taking their careers and their lives in their own hands. I mean, they can do what they please. And, in the end, you still have to go out. You still have to play the game. You still have to go out and execute. And you still have to build the chemistry. With this Brooklyn Nets team, I think really that's the main thing is just getting the whole team healthy and getting as many games under their belt as they can. You don't want to have what happened to them happen to like what happened to Clippers last year, where they just really were never able to get that continuity going. And in such, they weren't able to really mesh soon enough, and then they were able to be beaten. So it'll be interesting to see how the chemistry experiment goes out in Brooklyn. Then just another minor move for the Dallas Mavericks, adding a veteran shooter in J.J. Redick, getting him in a trade from the New Orleans Pelicans. I think J.J. is just a veteran who will be a good ear for Luka Doncic to be around him, space the floor for him. I mean, you're not going to ask J.J. to do a whole lot, but he's just another guy to, be in Luka's arsenal of tools. And, he's also going to be a good voice in the locker room, I think, for Luka Doncic and for Porzingis, for that matter, a guy who's been around for a long time. Then, one trade that kind of stirred up a little bit of news is the LA Clippers trading for point guard Rajon Rondo in exchange for Lou Will. Now, when I talked about, the Clippers last time, I said that all they needed to do was not focus on what the Lakers were doing like they did last year. All they needed was to go out and get a point guard. I said either go get Kyle Lowry or go get Doe. They went out and got Rajon Rondo. All they had to do was give up a piece in Lou Will. As far as Lou Will and being in LA, I think honestly, the whole Magic City and Atlanta thing from last year's NBA bubble, I think honestly the organization and really media and fans in general never really got over that. And I think that was sort of causing a cloud in the organization and on the team. And, I think slowly they were starting to phase Lou Will out from, the way you look at it and just the situation, the way the team was going and the direction the team was going. So I think it was just time for Lou Will to get a new chapter. I think him coming off the bench in Atlanta, and him being at home, I think that'll be a good fit for him. He'll be able to work with Trae Young and John Collins, and he'll be another veteran voice in that locker room as far as Atlanta is concerned. They've been able to get some wins going under Nate McMillan. So I think, having another veteran voice who's a calming presence, laid back guy, I think he'll help out that young team out there. And then in exchange, you have Rajon Rondo, true point guard going over to the Clippers, which is what they need, a floor general, a guy with a very, very high basketball IQ out there who can really, put guys in positions, which is what Kawhi Leonard has been longing for. And I think that's exactly what they needed. The one thing I think in terms of the Rondo being added to the locker room is how is that going to work out with people like Paul George and maybe guys who don't really fit Rajon's personality type because, he hasn't been able to get along with every team that he's been on. A place like LA where he had Braun and AD and Boogie Cousins on his side and guys he liked, guys he respected, I think it was a lot easier to get along with him. He also had a veteran coaching staff, Jay Kitt, Phil Handy, and Frank Vogel, who were on his wavelength. So now you have Tyronn Lue, you have Chauncey Billups on the coaching staff. You have, Kawhi Leonard's stoics, personality, and then, Paul George. How is that going to mesh? I think it'll work out, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes for the Clippers and see if maybe they can fix the wrongs that they were making last year. Maybe make a further push this year when playoff time rolls around. Then in another Eastern Conference contender, adding another shooter in the 76ers, trading for George Hill. George Hill, another guy who could space the floor. He had kind of just been, doing this thing out in Oklahoma City, and now he's able to be added onto another contender and really make another playoff run, add his veteran voice and veteran presence. I love seeing guys who are, good fits, good locker room fits, and, good kind of ears be added to veteran teams who are trying to make a push to be contenders. You have Seth Curry, you have Danny Green out there. Tobias Harris is starting to come into his own now that the floor is being spread out because of the spacing out in Philly. And Philly's been able to be unlocked under Doc Rivers. So I think adding another floor spacing point guard who can just be another tool in the arsenal, I think that'll help the 76ers come playoff time. Then next on the list, we have probably the biggest trade of the day, which was the Orlando Magic fire sale, where basically they gave up their entire core. They went full rebuild mode. I guess if you're going to, go rebuild mode, you do it the way the Magic did, and you give away all your stars. They let Nikola Vucevic go over to the Chicago Bulls. So now you have a good young center added alongside Zach LaVine and Kobe White, Lauri Markkanen under Billy Donovan. So that'll be an interesting team going forward. I don't think they'll really make any news or any moves or really any noise this year. But going forward, I think that'll be an interesting team out of Chicago. I think they're on the right path. And then, the bigger move is Aaron Gordon being traded over to the Denver Nuggets for R.J. Hampton and Gary Harris. For me, that was a big move because the Denver Nuggets didn't have to give up Michael Porter Jr. I mean, I don't understand. If I'm dealing with the Nuggets and I want a young player, there's no way I do that trade without getting MPJ. That's just how I feel about it. So now you have a core of Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and then you have, JaVale McGee, another shot blocker who you also brought in, another veteran voice, and a guy who can also rim run, catch lobs from the point center, Nikola Jokic. So, I mean, I love what the Denver Nuggets have done. Does that make them the championship contender? Does that scare maybe the teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, and even the Nets? We'll see. But I definitely love the direction the team is going. After them losing Jeremy Grant last year, losing the Plumlee brother, I think they really needed to retool, and they were able to do so in a better fashion. So, hats off and kudos to them. It'll be really interesting to see, how they finish the season off and how much of an impact Aaron Gordon has. I just want him to change his number. That number 50 stuff, that's the only downside to the trade. It's just he needs to change his number. But it'll be interesting to see. Then And I don't understand this next move. Man, I get it, but at the same time, it really doesn't do anything for me. Was Evan Fournier being a part of the Magic sale and being sent over to the Boston Celtics? To me, I mean, that doesn't move the needle any. That doesn't surprise me any. I honestly just think that the Boston Celtics just need a surge. They just need an injection of whatever they need out there. I think that the players are getting tired of Brad Stevens. He's starting to turn a deaf ear. I think Danny Ainge, has rested a little too much on his laurels and, just saved up all these draft picks, but have never gone out and really tried to aggressively improve the team. And I'll get to that towards the end, but I just feel like the Celtics are just stuck in quicksand. You paid Jason Tatum, you paid Marcus Smart, you paid Jaylen Brown, and those are your cornerstones, but you really have not built a proper team around them. You let Gordon Hayward walk for nothing. You let Kyrie Irving walk for nothing. And, your substitutes for them are a bunch of young draft picks who are still trying to develop, and Kemba Walker, who struggled because he's been hurt. So I just think that, the Celtics really, I don't know whether getting rid of the coach is the idea, but Danny really needs to, you know, make efforts and make strides to try to really be a more competitive team. It's not enough just to be good. I'd rather be great for a short period of time than to be good for a long period of time. To me, being a good middle of the pack team is overrated. That's just, where I feel like the Celtics are at. So I'm down on them. I don't see them making any moves. I don't see them making any noise. I think they're on the decline, and that's just what I feel about the Celtics right now. And then finally, the LA Lakers made some noise, but there was talks about them trading for Kyle Lowry along with the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers. They don't pull the trigger on the trade, which I agreed with. I felt like giving up guys like Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, and the young bull THT was just a little too much for a guy who's 36 and is going to want big money. I mean, Kyle Lowry's a great player. I love his dog. I love his mentality, but I just think that was a little too much to give up. But after the fact, they were able to sign a center in Andre Drummond, who I think was just what they needed in terms of a guy who can grab rebounds, be able to defend, be active on the defensive side of the ball, get you steals, catch lobs for you. I think, Andre was really, sort of wasting away on Detroit. So now he's added to a contender, and it'll be interesting to see just his impact on the floor for the Lakers until Anthony Davis and LeBron James come back and get healthy again. But I think that's what they need. I don't think they really needed to do a whole lot. I mean, obviously, if you can improve the team, then by all means do it. But I just think with them being hard capped, I think Andre Drummond was the most realistic option in terms of improving the team that they could do and that they needed at the time. And then finally, just wrapping it up here in Houston, the Houston Rockets trade away Victor Oladipo to the Miami Heat, and the James Harden trade ended up, really kind of being a bot situation, and we really weren't able to get too much back, in return for him. But at the same time, I mean, you had a disgruntled star who really kind of, sat his way and tanked his way out of here. So it is what it is. But, now we just have to really hope, if you're a Houston Rockets fan, that these draft picks are able to hit, or we're able to trade them and get some real valuable pieces out here to build our future going forward. But it'll be an interesting situation for sure. As far as Victor Oladipo and being in Miami, I mean, there had been talks that he had been interested in being a Miami Heat player. Now he's there. It's a matter of him getting healthy again and seeing if his game, his play can fit into the Heat culture and to what that team has going on. Because he's a good athlete, but, him dealing with injuries has kind of limited his game. So now it's a matter of him getting healthy again so we can get a new contract and also reemerge as that all-star that he was a few years ago. But just surveying the lay of the land, as the playoffs start to approach, I think that the two teams to be in the West is going to be, the Lakers and the Clippers. I think that the Jazz, while they've been doing really well this regular season, I think they're just a good regular season team that's going to challenge and win a lot of games. But, I think they're still another all-star piece away from really making any true noise. But I do respect what they've done. I respect their team. And then the Phoenix Suns, again, a young up-and-coming team, but I think they're missing a veteran piece, from really being considered a great contender. But I love what Chris Paul has been able to do, the coaching staff, and Monty Williams has been able to do out there. I think they really are on the uptick now that they have a direction and they have guidance in the organization. And then in the East, I think, it's really the Nets conference to lose. I think the Sixers will give them a run for the money if they do meet up. I do like what the Sixers have done. But I think the Nets being as deep as they are in talent, and just, good, solid coaching staff out there. I mean, Steve Nash is a first year coach, but he does have a good staff around him and good players. And they have the deepest roster, which I think will be able to help make Steve's job a little easier, once the chemistry gets fixed. I think the Milwaukee Bucks aren't the hunted anymore, so that'll be an advantage for them. I think they'll be able to kind of strive without having a target on their back, but I still think that Giannis still has a step in his game to take, which he will, I think, get there, but I don't think it'll be this year. Once he really learns how to space the floor, get a mid-range game, versatile his game, and not just be a guy who relies on getting his game off in the post, I think then we'll be able to see him really strive and that team really strive out in Milwaukee. Outside of those three teams in the East, I don't really see any other true contender really challenging. And so we'll see once the playoffs roll around, how things kind of go and, how the rest of the season sort of unfolds. But it'll just be a very interesting season, to say the least. It's been a great season so far, given the circumstances, given dealing with COVID and isolation. They've still been able to put games together. And that's all we can ask for as fans. But I think the take-home message, with all this stuff is really that you have to actively be aggressive in trying to better your team, especially, if you're a defending champ like the Lakers. You look at what the Nets have done. Once you win, you become the hunted. So for teams and for people who think that you can just, get by staying pat, you stay pat, you get comfortable, you get caught. So you have to always be looking at how can you improve. Right. And you have to look at the competition, make sure you control what you can control, but always be, searching for ways to get better, because you never want to let the gap close and you don't want the gaps to narrow. So I think every team who's wanted to get better had gotten better, and the teams that are rebuilding, I think they're on that path and they're kind of already faded away. But that'll do it for this episode of Four Insight. You can catch this episode on YouTube, Anchor, Spotify. Hit my inbox. Let me know what you guys want to hear. You can also engage with me at social media at More Insight on Instagram as well as on Facebook. And much love and appreciation.